Okay, so now we are on our article, and I will be calling out the names of my students to read. So let's begin. This article is titled "Children in the Shadows." Um, so this just highlights some different stories of Jews who have experienced and what their experience was during World War II, during this really difficult time. So James, can you read the first section for me? Thank you. Quiet and never tell anyone you are Jewish. Renee Schwab heard that a lot as a young girl. She heard it from her mother, who tried to keep Renee safe from the Nazi German soldiers who killed and enslaved European Jews during World War II. She heard it from Madame de Glace, who hid Renee's family in a small apartment in Brussels, Belgium. She heard it again from the Catholic nuns who concealed Renee when it became too dangerous for her to live with Madame de Glacius. Finally, she heard it from the Protestant teachers who took Renee in until the Americans arrived and liberated Belgium. Everyone told me Jewish was a bad word. Renee Schwab, now Renee Fritz of Bloomfield, Connecticut, told Senior Edition. They did it for my protection as well as theirs. Okay, so from reading that article, we find that Renee was a young girl who was kind of forced into hiding, and she was kind of forced to lie about who she was and about her background as a Jew, because being a Jew during that time was very dangerous. Okay, so how do you think, it doesn't come right out and say, but how do you think Renee felt as she was in hiding, as she was told to not tell anyone of her Jewish heritage? What do you think? James? Okay, yeah, that's a good takeaway. She was probably really scared. Um, the article says that she was a young girl. It never comes out and says how old she was. But I would assume that she was your guys' age. And just, I want you guys just to be mindful of what that would feel like for you if you were in Renee's situation and if you had to go into hiding for being a Jew. So being a Jew is something that they could not control. So I want you guys to imagine being forced into hiding, being forced to hide your identity. And just imagine that. Imagine how you would feel. Okay, so the next section, Life on the Run. John, can you read this for me, please? Thank you. Renee's story of being a Jewish kid growing up in war-torn Europe was part of an exhibit on display in the early 2000s at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. The exhibit, Life in Shadows, Hidden Children and the Holocaust, is no longer on display at the museum, but a transcript and photos of some of the exhibit's displays can be found on the museum's website as an online exhibition. The exhibition reveals the stories of Jewish children who escaped the Holocaust. The Holocaust refers to the killing of 6 million Jews and others whom the Nazis, led by Adolf Hitler, thought to be inferior. The Nazis killed about 1.5 million Jewish children. Okay, so here we find that this display was in the museum, and it's no longer there now. But just from this, we can infer that it was powerful because people would walk by and see what life was like, just to hear Renee's story and what life was like for her. Okay, next paragraph, Matthew. Thousands of Jewish children, however, survived by concealing their identities or hiding out in attics, cellars, bars, and sewers. Like Renee, many children found refuge with Christian families. Others sought safety in churches and orphanages. Some played a dangerous game of hide and seek with the Nazis, moving from place to place to avoid capture. What stuck out to you about that little paragraph? Good, Matthew. Yeah, that's a good point. This paragraph states that some children were hidden in sewers. As we read Renee's story, it said that she was able to hide in other people's homes. And we read further on that some children weren't that lucky, that they had to be hidden in more dangerous places, like sewers. So I want you to imagine how you would feel if you were a Jew hiding for your life, running for your life, and being forced to hide in a sewer. Okay, next paragraph, Luke. The exhibition includes photos of many pieces of everyday life that tell extraordinary stories. For example, there is a photo of a sweater worn by 8-year-old Christina Chiger, who hid in the sewers for more than a year. Visitors to the site can also view a photo of a light blue dress worn by Sabina Kagan when she hid from the Nazi death squads. Also in the exhibition is a photo of tiny toy soldiers. Jurek and his brother fashioned out of wood scraps. The brothers played with the soldiers in a flea-infested basement because they were afraid to go outside. This paragraph talks a little about the toys that they played with. And today we have, there's so many toys that we can play with. Mostly you guys play on smartphones though. And back then they didn't have that. They were, for entertainment, they just created their own fun. Okay, so we go on. Mark, can you read the next paragraph? Church of Hope. To make sure that others know his story of survival, Leon of West Hartford, Connecticut, donated several photos and an oral history to the museum. Just before the war, the Russian army forced Leon and his Jewish family to move from Poland to the Ukraine and the Soviet Union. When the Germans invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, Leon's father asked a priest to take care of Leon and his older brother. The priest separated the brothers, hoping that at least one would survive the war. Each went to a different monastery. At the monastery, Leon had to pretend to be a Christian. He changed his name and learned a new language. I had to pretend I was someone else, Leon told Senior Edition. That was an enormous burden to place on the 7-year-old. His brother also survived the Holocaust. Yeah, so here we read about this boy who had to change his identity in order to fit in order to not be caught. And I want you guys to imagine what that would be like, what you would feel like if you had to do that. Okay, last paragraph. Elizabeth, can you read that for me? Lost Childhood. Before the exhibit opened at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, Leon was looking forward to seeing it. As for Renee, she said people should visit the museum to learn about the Holocaust. Renee donated photographs and her mother's trunk to the exhibit. Madame de Glacius had kept the trunk and all its belongings, hoping to return it to Renee's family. Now I get to do something for humanity, Renee said. Okay. So I hope you learned a few things from that article. I hope you highlighted some places where you see just how they felt about being in hiding, how they felt being on the run. Okay, now if you will take out your quiz, we are going to go through that. I will read the questions to you. If need be, you can refer back to your article. Okay, it says use the article Eyewitnesses of History, Children of War to answer questions 1 and 2. Number 1. When Hans is asked about his feelings regarding the Nazi Party, he answers by comparing his life under the Nazi Party to a different situation. What situation does Hans ask his interviewer Will to imagine? So refer back to that interview. Number 2, why did Hans feel like he had to lie while living in Nazi Germany? So think back. Use your article and think back. Use this article, Children in the Shadows, to answer questions 3 and 4. Number 3, what did Leon have to do at the monastery in order to survive the war safely? And number 4, why did people tell Renee that Jewish was a bad word? Use the articles Children in the Shadows and Eyewitnesses to History, Children of War to answer question 5. Number 5, Hans from Eyewitness to History, Children of War was not Jewish, but the children mentioned in Children in the Shadows were Jewish. How were Hans and the Jewish children experiences of the war similar? Okay, once you are done with that quiz, please turn it in. Just lay it on my desk and I will grade those in a minute. Now for our last part of this lesson, I want you guys to take some time, take about 20 minutes, and using the knowledge that we learned from this article, I want you guys to write a few paragraphs and telling how you would feel. Put yourself in this place. Throughout the article, I told you to imagine what it would feel like to be these children who had to lie, who had to run away, who had to hide who they really were. And I want you to take a few paragraphs to describe how you would feel if you were in their situation. Just think back to this article about the different feelings that we kind of talked about. And then when you are done with those, I want you guys, you can read those aloud to us, and that will be the end of the lesson. Thank you guys. Thank you for participating in discussion, and thank you.